All right, guys. Channel Weird. So glad to be here. We took a little hiatus last week, but we're back, and we're here with one of my favorite people, Dan Schaefer. I met him at a Comic-Con a while back, and the thing is that we were doing a show before the show, Dan. We really were. He and I were just talking together about movies and television, and the reason why is because this is a list, a list of everything that Dan has done. Dan is he's contributed to concept storyboard stuff, film, television productions. He's been doing this for 30 years, doing campaigns for the NBA, Microsoft, Adidas, Nike, Intel, HP, Clorox, Airwick, Cadillac, Four Seasons. He's done feature films, television, worked for NBC, Universal, MGM, Lionsgate, Paramount, TNT, HBO, Netflix. I go down the list.
Yeah, pretty much.
And you know he's hiding in the shadows here in the great city of Portland, Oregon.
Yeah.
How long? Now, you say 30 years of this.
It's probably been longer than that now. I officially say my career started in '86 when I started working in the comic book field.
Right.
As an assistant.
And so you were publishing for what comic book company?
That I started right with DC Comics.
So you're doing DC.
As an assistant.
I guess right off the bat, and we were talking earlier about how a lot of things now are lacking soul.
Yeah.
DC is lacking soul in the movie industry. Did you see Zack Snyder's cut?
You know, I still haven't seen it. Is it any good?
Yes.
Okay.
I think it's great.
It's probably improved from the first
version.
version.
The only problem is I was telling my stepson, we watched it together, and we had to watch it in 2 parts.
Yeah.
And I said to him, I'd like to watch it again, but it's 4 freaking hours of my life that I'm going to waste.
Well, you can watch it in parts.
Yeah, I guess I can again, because it just... The problem is that what DC does is they slap together things, from what I can gather, and for some reason we don't have sympathy for the characters. They expect us to have sympathy because we've read the comic books.
Right.
And, yeah, of course you do for the comic books, but you have to build characterization in a movie. And that's one of the things. You did storyboard for a long time. And I
still do.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I was very surprised that storyboard still exists.
Yeah.
And the reason why is because they have computers now, they have all this. But I remember seeing the gallery on Disney talking about The Mandalorian, and they still had these types of storyboards for The Mandalorian. I was very surprised. Why is it that they still continue to do storyboards even though they have computers now? What do you think?
Well, it's a way for the director to have sort of an advanced rehearsal of the material and figure out how he or she is going to tell the story. So you can easily break down the shots that you need and tell the story on paper so that when you go to shoot it, it's really just about checking off what you need as opposed to experimenting on the set. So it saves you some money and it adds to the creativity.
So a director doesn't give you the ideas, does he? Or do you just come up with the ideas of the blocking and all that?
Well, it's a little of both. I mean, the director will talk you through what they're seeing, and sometimes they'll give you a shot list. Sometimes, like on Grimm, several times, directors would walk through the set, and I'd have to take notes as we go. I've done storyboards over the phone.
Really?
Yeah. I have a friend, Noor Wazi, in the UK, and we've done all our films essentially virtually on the phone or using email.
Do they eventually take the storyboards though and put them in a computer form? Because I know because I've seen the process. I've seen the storyboard, and then I've seen storyboards that seem to be animated in a lot of ways.
Right. That's the next step. A previs person will take those storyboards and they'll add sort of CG material to it so they can do a sort of a run through in 3D. So, but that's not really what I do. I'm come up with the creative part at the beginning, just so that the whole crew can see it. So when you do a series of storyboards, they will then be approved, and then they're dispersed among the different departments, so that each department knows what's going to be on screen and what's important. So if the person is wearing a hat through part of it and they take it off, they'll know that in this sequence it's gone.
So you started with DC.
Yeah.
What characters?
It was, and again, I was an assistant. It was in The Warlord, and which was great because I was a fan of Mike Grell growing up. He was a big inspiration, and he created the Warlord. And then one of the first books that I worked on after that was John Sable, which he also created. And so he and I got to be friends too over the years. So
we were talking last night on Ground Zero about how a lot of times science fiction has been a force structuring model for what we see now. Talking about, for example, the man behind the first cell phone said that he got the idea from Star Trek.
Right.
And you keep building from, and what's funny is that the cell phone came from a storyboard writer, obviously, because the storyboard writer would have to include these things in how he's patterning or at least blocking a scene from Star Trek. So it all begins in the concept of the brain putting to paper, and eventually we have these things. Do you feel like that in times, of course you're force structuring a movie or force structuring a TV show, but when you're bringing in these concepts, do you feel like that maybe you're contributing to force structuring something that may eventually become, I don't know, part of our lives now in reality?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, I know for instance, there's on Grimm, oftentimes the director would say, well, if I miss something, just add it in. And so I'd fill out I do it all in as if it was being edited. So that way I get the full flow of that scene or those sequences.
Right.
So yeah, things that you add, you feel like that could be something that's carried on and remembered.
I remember one of the things about Grimm. When I watched Grimm, I watched it off and on. I really didn't have time because I was doing my show during the time it came on. So I never really had the time to watch it. I never really had anything to put in queue. I may go back and watch it if it's still available somewhere. I'll watch it. But I remember one show that really impressed me was the Krampus episode.
Yes.
And the reason why was because I was my aunt used to tell me Krampus stories. And I remember one time I was at a bar and they wanted me to tell a story. It was Rick Emerson. I was working with him at the time.
Yeah.
And Rick said, because it was a Christmas party that he threw, and he says, you're going to have to go up on stage. You're just going to have to, for the moment you're on, I want you to tell a story, something that would freak people out. And so actually, with a few beers in me, I was able to retell the story of my aunt and how she conveyed to me that it was Krampus and that Krampus used to beat kids and all this other stuff. And the conceptualization of Krampus never really struck me. We knew it was some sort of a woodland demon of some kind, and then I started seeing the dances, and they have those parades and everything.
Right.
But the conceptualization of Krampus for Grimm, I thought was the most original I had ever seen.
Yeah, I thought so too. I mean, that was a great episode that we worked on. It got shot in Forest Park, and it was a very creative,
I mean, because they did the movie.
Yeah,
and
right.
the movie concept of this big honking jet-propelled Krampus going from house to house, I thought was terrifying. But just the various concepts of how it's interpreted and how storyboard people bring images to light. Comic book people, I mean, you're a comic book person too.
Right.
Have taken these concepts, and even before movies existed. I mean, first of all, we had books, and in our own mind's eye, we had to try and figure out what things look like.
Right.
But it took the comic book writers and the storyboard writers to give us images that have stuck with us in the beginning, and then of course, we take liberties with the movies.
Right.
Was there ever a time where you did a storyboard or did a comic book where they took it and they depicted it and you were very disappointed?
Well, yeah, like not all movies turn out like you like them to turn out.
Right.
And for various reasons. I worked on a movie called, what was it called?
It was so memorable.
Right, it was so memorable. But it started off. It was supposed to take place in the summer, and it got pushed back because directors quit.
Right.
And they ended up not doing it. So eventually it was around November, and it was supposed to be a summer movie. So as soon as we got sets built, it started to rain. So all of our indoor sets were being shot, and by the time we needed to shoot outdoors, it was just winter.
Right.
So they had to move it to California, and then got it to Sacramento, and first thing, it started to rain.
Oh my gosh.
So they had to move it another time. So those kind of things happen. It ended up being a pretty good movie.
Right.
You know,
but with all
beyond that.
Well, it just the commotion of moving from around and around kind of throws it.
And that was one of those cases where it went from me being a storyboard artist to being a production illustrator to being an art director.
Right.
Because people were quitting.
Right.
So those things happen.
You know, being an artist, just to bring it into the perspective of what's happening with the idea of shutting down ideas, we're talking about the cancel culture.
Yeah.
How do you view the cancel culture in your line of work?
I try to stay away from it because, I mean, you know, I like good storytelling and good stories, and I think everyone should be free to have, you know, if you've got a good idea, try it, and if it doesn't work.
Because people,
Yeah.
I mean, I had a guy, and I'm not going to mention who it was. I wanted this scientist to come on my show recently.
Right.
And he had a great book, and I was looking it over, and I had just created a radio show where I used the image of the dark angel of death coming through a Nazi flag, ripping it apart, because I was talking about how a lot of the situation they're doing with the vaccines is kind of like the T4 operations that Hitler did back in the 1930s, where it was like, we experiment on certain people, and then if they die, so what? And I did a story about that, but the scientist saw the imagery and immediately freaked out and said, I don't want to come on your show because of the imagery. And I thought that was just so defeating and deflating, actually, because, you know, I had written this piece about how, you know, the T4 program was horrible to the Jews, horrible to the elderly, and yet this guy did not have the wherewithal to read it because he saw the imagery.
Right.
And it goes back to the idea that I think it was Baudrillard that said that we don't pay attention to language more than we pay attention to symbols.
Images are really important, and that comes back to storyboards, and that once you've drawn it, you can't unsee it.
Right.
So it, you know, it leaves an impression on the crew and the director. It reinforces their ideas of what the movie should look like. And you know, it's funny. I've had people say, "Well, the board looked exactly like the show." It's like because the director is the one who said that's the image that I want to capture, and so that's what my goal is to make it as close to their vision as possible.
So yeah, that's why I think it's important that people need to know that storyboard writers.
Well, you say writers. That's interesting. Storyboard artists, and there is a certain amount of writing going on because you're framing it, you're telling the story, you're telling it sort of through another person, but you can't detach your own involvement in it.
Right. Right.
So there is a bit of writing, you know, and I write too.
And we have to trust your experience too. That's the thing that's most important. Is those who choose you are trusting your experience to create that vision.
Right.
So it's like if you're a guy who doesn't have much experience in anything, and throws together a storyboard, it'll suck. But you know, you're being sought out. That's the most important thing we need to remember about this: is he is being sought out because of his reputation and because he has the experience to know and sees the vision.
Right.
It's like the vision to the paper, the vision to the canvas.
Absolutely.
I don't think people realize just how important that is when it comes to TV and in movies these days.
Oh, it's very important. I mean, it makes the production process more simple. It also defines what the director wants, and it adds a bit of practice before you get to the set, which can be very expensive if you have to reshoot things, or if I had one movie where I boarded everything in one direction and the director at the last minute decided to move it all in the other direction. Well, guess what happened? It all got moved back.
Right.
But it took 4 hours. So it was expensive.
Right.
So having it boarded and having a real solid idea of what you need early on makes a big difference.
Yeah, it's amazing that, like I say, it's the theater of the mind in the beginning. It's the mind's eye. The mind's eye goes to the canvas. The canvas then goes into bigger places like TV and movies. And I don't think people realize just how intricate it is. I think they think it's just the stars show up, they shoot them, they get a camera, they have a script. I don't think they understand that what you produce is the guts, the brain and guts of the film.
Yeah, I
TV
mean,
show. Yeah.
well, I mean, it's certainly the beyond the script,
Right.
which comes first. It's,
Right.
The core is the script, but after that, breaking it down into images is so important.
Dan Schaefer with us, and it's an exciting story, exciting background with all the movies and TV shows you see. We're going to get more deeper into the concepts and how this all goes the way it goes and how he feels about a lot of the movies and TV shows we see today. We'll be back with more right here on Channel Weird.
AncientLifeOil.com. That's AncientLifeOil.com. Are you stressed? I mean, who isn't? Anxiety creeping in? No, not that. Is sleep hard to attain because your brain just won't slow down? We're living in crazy times, and the fear knob has been turned up. Okay, there's an answer. Take a big breath, exhale, and go log on to AncientLifeOil.com. CBD, broad and full spectrum, organic and non-GMO CBD for you to enjoy. Change your tune from fear to calm, from brain overload to clear thinking. 0.003 THC on full spectrum and 0% THC on broad spectrum. Competitive pricing with the best quality. Also know everything is going to get better. No worries, be happy. CBD can help calm so your nerves don't think they're a 6-string electric guitar. Enjoy life, smile, and log on to AncientLifeOil.com for great CBD. That's AncientLifeOil.com. You'll be glad you did.
Hey guys, it's Clyde Lewis. Have you ever wanted Ground Zero merchandise but didn't know where to go? Well, I want to let you know that we now have our own online store with such items as t-shirts, hoodies, decals, tote bags, and other exclusive specialty apparel. There's a secure and easy-to-use shopping cart for your purchases. Coming soon will be signed posters and coffee mugs available as we are constantly adding new items. So shop today at the official Ground Zero store by going to groundzeromerch.com. That's groundzeromerch.com.
Following a disaster, your home emergency kit will be invaluable. Building a kit doesn't take long, and you'll be glad you did when disaster strikes. Here's a list of items to include: a first aid kit, battery-powered or hand crank radio, flashlight, extra batteries, an emergency whistle, cell phone with charger, cash and small bills, a local map with your family meeting place identified, food and water to last 2 weeks, garbage bags, dust masks, and seasonal clothing and footwear. Add prescription medications or any other important items unique to your family's needs. Once you've created your kit, check food expiry dates once a year and update seasonal clothing for growing children. If you have pets, make sure you have everything your furry friends need in an easy-to-carry grab-and-go bag. To learn more about preparing an emergency kit, visit mil.wa.gov/preparedness and get 2 weeks ready.
Be sure to get your low-cost 2-week supply of food with a miraculous 25-year shelf life by going to preparewithgroundzero.com.
Hey guys, this is Clyde Lewis from Ground Zero. In order to counter the growing suppression and censorship of information, we've created our own private digital playground called Aftermath.media. It's an exclusive online multimedia library featuring a social media platform, videos, audio clips, archive shows, and research groups. There are also documents and a news aggregator, all for $10 a month. If you sign up for a yearly subscription this March, it's only $79. So go to Aftermath.media. Again, that's Aftermath.media.
Hi, I'm Stephen Briggs from the Surfer Music app. Surfer links thousands of stations displaying song titles and artists organized by genre. It's easy to find your favorites. You can join our Kickstarter campaign. Help us build 5 new features for the Surfer Music app. Find out more, go to Kickstarter.com and search for Surfer Music, S-U-R-F-R. For a direct link, go to surfer.fm and click the Kickstarter banner. That's S-U-R-F-R.fm.
Hey guys, welcome back to Channel Weird. I'm Clyde Lewis with Dan Schaefer, the man who is behind a lot of the TV series, movies, music videos, Of course, comic book artists, just all kinds of things on his resume that I think would be worthy of discussing. So many things, and for those of us who are geeks into the science fiction realm and beyond, I mean, this is for me a great opportunity to start, talking about, some of the things of today as opposed to the past when we were seeing a lot of good movies. I'm not saying that we live in a bad time for movies. I would say, and we were discussing this earlier, and I wanted to kind of expound upon it. There's a soul, I think, lacking in a lot of things we're seeing these days. And I was talking particularly about Debris, which is a TV show that I want to like and I'm trying to invest in, but I'm losing it because it's like we had the X-Files, we had Fringe, and now we have this. And it's almost like they're milking something to the point where it has no soul anymore. Tell me about why we're seeing more TV shows with no soul.
Well,
in my opinion.
I often think that it has to do with too many writers, too much, as opposed to having one voice in a show, personal voice in the script, and it all sort of emanates from the script. So if it's a good story, it's all those other things, me and the crew, everyone, that all falls in line, because we have some really good crews here in Portland, but everywhere, we have professional people.
I think what is notorious, I think the thing, without naming names, but I'm going to anyway, Disney. Disney has been, especially with the Star Wars series that they've been doing, the funny thing is that they killed Star Wars right in front of our eyes.
Yes.
For those of us that are big Star Wars fans, and a lot of people agree that the last 3 Star Wars movies are, they're throwaways.
Yeah, don't get me started.
Well, I'd love to hear you say this because we have this discussion all the time about Star Wars.
Well, and I do too. I mean, the last 3 movies were just awful.
Yeah.
I mean, and I have nothing against Disney. I worked for Disney. I worked on Timmy Failure, which I thought was a great film. But the Star Wars movies, not so good.
I'm just wondering where we went wrong. I mean,
well, they didn't pay attention to what people wanted. We had 3 great movies to look at as a model for what the audience wanted to see. Good characters, well-developed stories, and it seems like they just rushed the most recent 3 movies.
I think what lacks, and I think when we're talking about the lack of soul, is if you ever read Joseph Campbell and The Power of Myth, he explains it well. He says you need to tap into the collective unconscious of people dealing with these archetypes that we have inside of all of us. And when we first saw Star Wars, the appeal was not just the fact that it was edited better than the original. If you've seen the original, you see what a disaster it was. But then they edited it better, looking better. But the characters were part of this mythology, the basic mythologies we've heard about, the damsel in distress, the hero, the Dark Knight. All these things have been put into Star Wars with the Western attitude.
Right.
And I think we lost that. And it's almost like the last 3 Star Wars films were remixes. Do you ever get that feeling?
Well, definitely the first one felt very much like, let's just do A New Hope over again with new characters.
Right.
And the thing is, when you take a movie like Star Wars, there are already fans who have expectations, and they love it, and they want it to be like, there's rules, there's ground rules, and they didn't follow any of those rules when they did these movies. No. Like, for instance, Rey having Force abilities right away. She didn't have to train.
No.
What was that all about?
I know.
It doesn't make for a good story either if there's no struggle.
Yeah, it was just a lot of, the problem we face now in film is a lot of filmmakers, I think the younger filmmakers, they want to be justice warriors. And they're thinking that, okay, we have to have a woman be a main character because that's the new trend. But what's interesting is how it's handled, because Rogue One is one of my favorite Star Wars films. In fact, it's right up there
It's-
with The Empire.
It's certainly the best of the new Star Wars films.
Exactly. And the reason why was because it was a war film, and the woman character, the female character, was very powerful. She started off, because we got to see the character grow.
Right.
It was a child who was afraid, that hid in the well or whatever it was, and then she grows into become this warrior.
Right.
We didn't see that with Rey. All we know is Rey is just some scavenger on a desert planet.
Right.
Where does that sound familiar? Who winds up going on an adventure. Where does that sound familiar? And we're just watching that going, what are they doing? They're ripping us off. They're giving us a remix. There's no soul in this.
Right.
And the same thing can be said about how they're taking, like, for example, TV shows like Saved by the Bell. Why do we have to Punky Brewster's back? Why do we have to do this?
Well, the thing I watched the new Punky Brewster. It's funny you'd bring that up, but I liked the original was a cute, fun, sort of family kids show,
Right.
and I thought that they took all the genetic material from that show and they brought it into the future. So I think that's important. Like it was the same actress playing Punky Brewster. It's still her friend. It's still in the same location. They remembered even her sort of mentor, father figure from the first series, even though he had died years earlier. So I thought it was important that they didn't forget all that. So often they'll say, well, let's just start from scratch.
Right.
Well, you're losing all those people who loved it originally.
Right.
They're not going to tune in. Or if they do, it's not going to be what they remembered.
Are you a Walking Dead fan by chance?
I never really got into it. I liked the comic book, and when I started watching the show, I liked the show, but for some reason,
It's
I
because
didn't
they're
watch
writing
it.
themselves into circles now. It just seems like we're stuck, having to do this show forever. And lately, I've been watching. It's called the season 10 special, character development shows.
Right.
And in reality, I watch it and I say to myself, most of these segments are just them wandering around in the forest, and running into the zombies again. And I'm thinking, this is boring. This is the most boring. And they
Yeah.
did it for filler. And I'm thinking, just get it over with. If you're going to be wasting our time, and it gets that way with a lot of shows. I invested my time in shows like Mad Men. And Mad Men was such a show where I was watching it, and it, once again, the guy that did The Sopranos did Mad Men, and the ending was just so unsatisfactory. You watch the last one of the series, you're going, all right, whatever. Why does that happen, do you think?
I think that maybe it has to do with they're trying to come up with the greatest ending possible instead of what really what the story tells it should be.
Right.
Like I think with Breaking Bad, I thought that was a good ending.
Yeah. Very
one
satisfying
one of the
ending.
greatest endings of all time.
Exactly.
And so often that doesn't happen. Show Barney Miller had a great ending because, they were shutting down the squad room and they're going to move the precinct and so it made sense. It made organic sense with the story. And so often that doesn't happen.
There's a movie out called Promising Young Female. I've seen this film, and it ends just like, it reminds me of Breaking Bad, how the ending is so satisfying, and you're watching it and you're going, yes, right. It ended so well. Do you think, though, let's get back to Breaking Bad. Do you think Camino needed to be made?
As a fan of all three shows, or the
Even Better Call Saul
and Breaking Bad, I just wanted to see more.
Yeah,
so
I
didn't
agree.
care. I watched it. In fact, I had been in Hawaii, and I was like, oh, I got to go see it. It's going to be at the theater.
Really?
And it wasn't showing in Hawaii,
Oh,
so I missed out. But
man.
but I would have loved to have seen it in the theater.
Yeah, that's one of the most successful, I think, TV shows, and I'm just aching for another Better Call Saul season.
It's really the best show on TV.
It is.
If there's a top 10, it's certainly in that top 5.
We reenacted on the air the other night. We do it on Beyond Zero. It's an after show. We redid the pie scene between Saul and the police, where he's talking about the guy has this fetish for pie.
Yes. Right.
Such a great scene.
And he does it with such a straight face.
I know, and you sit there going, "Are you kidding me?" It's just a great. I mean, great writing, great everything. I want to, when we come back, talk about storyboards that have been on the drawing board and never gotten anywhere. I want to talk to you about that too.
Sure.
I'd like to hear about that as well. Dan Schaefer with us on Channel Weird. Glad to have you guys here today, and very interesting conversation. It's kind of like geeking out. There's nothing wrong with that, right? No. We'll be back with more. Don't go away.
AncientLifeOil.com. That's AncientLifeOil.com. Are you stressed? I mean, who isn't? Anxiety creeping in? No, not that. Is sleep hard to attain because your brain just won't slow down? We're living in crazy times, and the fear knob has been turned up. Okay, there's an answer. Take a big breath, exhale, and go log on to AncientLifeOil.com. CBD, broad and full spectrum, organic and non-GMO CBD for you to enjoy. Change your tune from fear to calm, from brain overload to clear thinking. 0.003 THC on full spectrum and 0% THC on broad spectrum. Competitive pricing with the best quality. Also know everything is going to get better. No worries, be happy. CBD can help calm so your nerves don't think they're a 6-string electric guitar. Enjoy life, smile, and log on to AncientLifeOil.com for great CBD. That's AncientLifeOil.com. You'll be glad you did.
Hey guys, it's Clyde Lewis. Have you ever wanted Ground Zero merchandise but didn't know where to go? Well, I want to let you know that we now have our own online store with such items as t-shirts, hoodies, decals, tote bags, and other exclusive specialty apparel. There's a secure and easy-to-use shopping cart for your purchases. Coming soon will be signed posters and coffee mugs available as we are constantly adding new items. So shop today at the official Ground Zero store by going to groundzeromerch.com. That's groundzeromerch.com.
Following a disaster, your home emergency kit will be invaluable. Building a kit doesn't take long, and you'll be glad you did when disaster strikes. Here's a list of items to include: a first aid kit, battery-powered or hand crank radio, flashlight, extra batteries, an emergency whistle, cell phone with charger, cash and small bills, a local map with your family meeting place identified, food and water to last 2 weeks, garbage bags, dust masks, and seasonal clothing and footwear. Add prescription medications or any other important items unique to your family's needs. Once you've created your kit, check food expiry dates once a year and update seasonal clothing for growing children. If you have pets, make sure you have everything your furry friends need in an easy-to-carry grab-and-go bag. To learn more about preparing an emergency kit, visit mil.wa.gov/preparedness and get 2 weeks ready.
Be sure to get your low-cost 2-week supply of food with a miraculous 25-year shelf life by going to preparewithgroundzero.com.
Hey guys, this is Clyde Lewis from Ground Zero. In order to counter the growing suppression and censorship of information, we've created our own private digital playground called Aftermath.media. It's an exclusive online multimedia library featuring a social media platform, videos, audio clips, archive shows, and research groups. There are also documents and a news aggregator, all for $10 a month. If you sign up for a yearly subscription this March, it's only $79. So go to Aftermath.media. Again, that's Aftermath.media.
Hi, I'm Stephen Briggs from the Surfer Music app. Surfer links thousands of stations displaying song titles and artists organized by genre. It's easy to find your favorites. You can join our Kickstarter campaign. Help us build 5 new features for the Surfer Music app. Find out more, go to Kickstarter.com and search for Surfer Music, S-U-R-F-R. For a direct link, go to surfer.fm and click the Kickstarter banner. That's S-U-R-F-R.fm.
Dan Schaefer with us on Channel Weird. So I want to do some name dropping.
Okay.
Can we do some name dropping?
Sure.
Okay. Gus Van Zandt, how was he to work with?
Well, I worked on 3 different projects with him. It was interesting in that most of his directions were passed down through, in this case, a special effects director. So I would get notes from him and then act on them, send them back. And the one thing was to make things, I kind of come from a Spielberg sort of action sequence kind of background. And he wanted it simpler and simpler, and which is his style. And it ended up turning out great. Paranoid Park it got the 40th prize at Cannes, 40th anniversary Cannes prize, and it turned out to be a great movie.
You worked with Jonathan Frakes on a project, Frank Oz?
Frank Oz. I worked with Frank Oz on Leverage, and he was great to work with, great guy. Tallest director I've ever worked for, considering...
I didn't realize it was that tall because he's always underneath, puppets.
He was like 7 foot something.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, very friendly, very creative. And Frakes, I worked with him on Leverage and then Librarians. And again, a really good guy to work with. Very much sort of life of the party on the set. He's very relaxed. So it was fun to work with.
Have you ever been in a situation where, and you don't have to name names if you don't want to, but where the director was so picky and difficult that you just want to just give up?
Yeah, well, I don't think I've ever. I think that I sort of have I want to get the job done and be as professional as possible. So that never really crosses my mind. But there were that movie I mentioned earlier, where the director would get there late, wouldn't want to talk to people, wouldn't want to talk to you. That's not helpful, because I'm there for them. Mm-hmm. I'm there to make their life as easy as possible. So,
right.
Let me, if you're, so, but for the most part, I've had nothing but great experiences.
Because, there are people who talk about, some that are like, you always tell a good film, and I was always told this, you always tell a good film where the director is always accessible. Mm-hmm. A good film will be made when the director is accessible and when it's catered properly. I've heard those two things.
Well,
so if you have a bad caterer, it's going to be a crappy film.
You have to keep the crew happy.
Yeah.
Always.
Always.
Sometimes stresses in movies or the production ends up showing on the film in positive ways, though, because you're exerting more creativity. You're having to do more to make it work, and that shows in the final form.
Well, it's always like you look at some of the things I've been looking at and watching sometimes, and you say to yourself, "These guys had a good time making this movie." Obviously, it's like Guardians of the Galaxy.
Right.
I know James. I worked with him on Toxic Avenger. Mm-hmm. And when he directed it, it just looked like it was a lot of fun being a part of Guardians of the Galaxy. And the new Suicide Squad, it looks like it has potential too. It looks like it's going to be a lot of fun. Hopefully it's going to be an improvement.
Yeah.
Once again, back to DC, where that's where you were working. The idea that maybe if they bring in new, younger, earnest and directors that want to have fun, that I think the best directors are the geeks, definitely. The ones that come in and they've been raised basically swimming in all of this. They're the ones I think they're the best because they understand. They understand what works and what doesn't work.
That could be. I know that, for instance, like all of my heroes of film they're very much into the writing, like Stanley Kubrick or Martin Scorsese are very much into the writing, that being right. Mm-hmm. And I think that those are the best examples of good directors. There's a lot of the comic book movies, they lose it because they're not as invested in the character development. That's more important, I think, because all the other effects and flying and the super battles, they don't make up for what the character has. Like Batman versus Superman.
Right.
The last half hour is just a big fight scene.
Right.
Who cares?
Yeah.
As the credits were rolling, I was like, what was this movie anyway? Mm-hmm. It started to vaporize.
It's like Kong versus Godzilla is very frustrating right now. We just saw it the other day. My stepson and I, we were watching it. It was just totally frustrating because, we have a love for the characters dating way back, but it's almost as if that they're pushing sympathies on one character and vilifying another character, and that character they're vilifying is a character that we've loved in the cinema for a long time. And you're saying, why are you vilifying this character? Oh, because you want us all to feel sorry for one character. But it's like, don't do that. Don't manipulate us. Just let the characters speak for themselves.
Right. And if they're well written, then that interaction on screen will show. There'll be depth to both characters, or all the characters. Like we were mentioning, Better Call Saul, a completely well-developed series. Every episode, every scene is
exactly
well done.
I agree. Let's go back to comic books. How do you feel about the idea? Because I know that a lot of people, I don't think, would understand this, the continuity of doing Elseworlds type of stories in film, where, we as comic book readers are used to Elseworlds stories, meaning that, Batman is not typical. He's not the typical. I mean, we kind of have a taste of that when we first had Batman meet Ra's al Ghul. And everybody's like going, wow, what is this? This is not the Batman we knew, because we're used to, the comical or the somewhat, I guess you'd call it parody Batman. And then we start getting really serious with Christopher Nolan. And then it gets even serious again when we bring in Heath Ledger and the Joker, and how, and of course, who can, Phoenix, his portrayal of the Joker. And the thing about that portrayal of the Joker is it was almost like an Elseworlds Joker, where we again see a different type of Joker in a different world and a different time scale. How do you feel about doing that with the characters and putting them in movies and having people try to figure that out?
I personally right now think that that's the way that like DC can go, so that they can correct what has been kind of messed up, as far as taking the best elements of what they've got and then keeping them in continuity with one another. It's important that, like, the same actor that plays Batman should play for at least 5 or 6 movies.
I agree.
So that we get to know them. You take them in and out and put different actors in. It's not, you're starting from scratch every time.
Because in the Marvel universe, one of the things that I find interesting is that I didn't care about the Scarlet Witch. I didn't care about Vision at all. But then WandaVision comes out, and I'm watching it, and I'm thinking, I really care about these characters. Why did they make me care about these characters? And how is it that I got drawn in? And I think it's because of good character development, good storyboarding, and everything that you were involved with. And I'm realizing that maybe they can, in the magic of the mind and the heart, bring people in to care about characters that no one. I didn't buy a Scarlet Witch comic book.
Yeah,
I didn't care about Vision.
Well, and I think I got all those issues when they were coming out. What the ones they based the show on, and I liked it. But I mean, I think the best Marvel, other than Ant-Man. I think the characters are well developed because they have a lot of problems that they have to deal with, which is totally Marvel. When Marvel started off in the 60s, it was all about like Peter Parker. He's a kid, he gets picked on, he has a lot of problems, and a lot of people can relate to that. And it also gives a place for that character to grow. And I think Daredevil, the TV series, was the best Marvel production they ever made, because he had so many problems and so many, and they tried to stay close to what the character was too.
Yeah, I love Daredevil. That was great. It's like, and that's the thing, is that you need to have when you look at a character, it's got to have the type of intricate personality that most people can relate to. I think that's why more people relate to Batman than they relate to Superman, because Superman's a god. Batman, though, is a millionaire, but he's a troubled millionaire,
right? Who
basically goes around in a cape and fights crime. One of the best lines, I think, in the Batman movie with Affleck was, "What's your superpower?" And he says, "I'm rich." And I just thought it was a great line, because we forget that he's Bruce Wayne. But I just think that people tend to believe that Batman films need continuity of some kind. There needs to be a continuity of some kind. And so if you were to go back and you were to do the Nightmare series of Batman, I mean, everything we're doing is Dark Knight. Everything is Frank Miller. Frank Miller gave us Batman again. But you go back and you're saying to yourself, well, what about the Nightmare series? And they kind of hinted at that in the Zack Snyder cut, because they go to the Nightmare series in the future where, the world is in an apocalyptic state. But I don't think anybody would understand that unless they're a comic book fan.
Right.
I have Liam, my stepson, explain to me all the time, because a lot of these times I haven't really gotten into some of these Elseworld stories, but he knows a lot about them.
Well, I think a lot, as far as storyboarding, the idea is that you're planning something out in detail. And I think in the same way with the Marvel and DC universe, if you're to take all the movies they're potentially going to do,
right,
and you map them out very carefully,
right,
that it will start to be one thing.
I know, and I think I think we need to give credit for the idea that people might understand it even better. Dan Schaefer with us right now on Channel Weird, and we'll be back.
AncientLifeOil.com. That's AncientLifeOil.com. Are you stressed? I mean, who isn't? Anxiety creeping in? No, not that. Is sleep hard to attain because your brain just won't slow down? We're living in crazy times, and the fear knob has been turned up. Okay, there's an answer. Take a big breath, exhale, and go log on to AncientLifeOil.com. CBD, broad and full spectrum, organic and non-GMO CBD for you to enjoy. Change your tune from fear to calm, from brain overload to clear thinking. 0.003 THC on full spectrum and 0% THC on broad spectrum. Competitive pricing with the best quality. Also know everything is going to get better. No worries, be happy. CBD can help calm so your nerves don't think they're a 6-string electric guitar. Enjoy life, smile, and log on to AncientLifeOil.com for great CBD. That's AncientLifeOil.com. You'll be glad you did.
Hey guys, it's Clyde Lewis. Have you ever wanted Ground Zero merchandise but didn't know where to go? Well, I want to let you know that we now have our own online store with such items as t-shirts, hoodies, decals, tote bags, and other exclusive specialty apparel. There's a secure and easy-to-use shopping cart for your purchases. Coming soon will be signed posters and coffee mugs available as we are constantly adding new items. So shop today at the official Ground Zero store by going to groundzeromerch.com. That's groundzeromerch.com.
Following a disaster, your home emergency kit will be invaluable. Building a kit doesn't take long, and you'll be glad you did when disaster strikes. Here's a list of items to include: a first aid kit, battery-powered or hand crank radio, flashlight, extra batteries, an emergency whistle, cell phone with charger, cash and small bills, a local map with your family meeting place identified, food and water to last 2 weeks, garbage bags, dust masks, and seasonal clothing and footwear. Add prescription medications or any other important items unique to your family's needs. Once you've created your kit, check food expiry dates once a year and update seasonal clothing for growing children. If you have pets, make sure you have everything your furry friends need in an easy-to-carry grab-and-go bag. To learn more about preparing an emergency kit, visit mil.wa.gov/preparedness and get 2 weeks ready.
Be sure to get your low-cost 2-week supply of food with a miraculous 25-year shelf life by going to preparewithgroundzero.com.
Hey guys, this is Clyde Lewis from Ground Zero. In order to counter the growing suppression and censorship of information, we've created our own private digital playground called Aftermath.media. It's an exclusive online multimedia library featuring a social media platform, videos, audio clips, archive shows, and research groups. There are also documents and a news aggregator, all for $10 a month. If you sign up for a yearly subscription this March, it's only $79. So go to Aftermath.media. Again, that's Aftermath.media.
Hi, I'm Stephen Briggs from the Surfer Music app. Surfer links thousands of stations displaying song titles and artists organized by genre. It's easy to find your favorites. You can join our Kickstarter campaign. Help us build 5 new features for the Surfer Music app. Find out more, go to Kickstarter.com and search for Surfer Music, S-U-R-F-R. For a direct link, go to surfer.fm and click the Kickstarter banner. That's S-U-R-F-R.fm.
Dan Schaefer with us. We just can't stop talking about Star Wars. We
I know.
did during the break.
Well, we need to do another episode.
We got to do another show.
Yeah.
Where we're just talk. We're just going to talk about.
I could do that.
Things
for
we
now.
hate about sci-fi, things we love about sci-fi right now.
Yeah.
I just want so badly to talk about what we were just talking about, but we're not going to. I want to talk about your
come
movies.
back. Yeah.
If we have time.
Yeah. Well, later. We could do.
Yeah, we'll do another show.
Yeah.
Let's talk about your movies.
Okay.
So you're a director too.
I am a
which is
director too.
Awesome.
Yeah. So
And you're working side by side with Academy Award nominated people.
I have many times over the years. Yeah, and when I did Mania, which was a documentary about the Trailblazers, I had already been working with Sky Fitzgerald on a movie called Bomb Hunters, where I did storyboards and then I did drawings that were used in the film to explain things that he could not get, because it was about a culture of reclaiming bombs for the materials in that country in Cambodia.
Right.
And so, so he did the film work on Mania, and then I worked with him on other things over the years.
You've also done a lot of location films. I was reading about your trip to Poland or working in Poland.
Yeah, I did a movie called Figaro, searching a moment in the character. I'm forgetting myself.
Oh.
So, but it was fantastic. It's a once in a lifetime opportunity. I had my wife had gotten a job doing hair and makeup on the production, and it was going from Kentucky, where they would do certain parts of it, and then we would go over to Poland. And so I went to Kentucky and then went through all the rehearsals, filming everything, interviewing everybody, and then we went to Poland and had all kinds of great adventures.
I think every American should take a trip elsewhere.
Yeah.
Europe, somewhere else.
Yeah.
Just so they can get the feel of what the world is like. Because I think a lot of the time, and I call this an empathy gap. I think a lot of the time Americans lack empathy with regard to characters in other countries. I think, they want an American story to be told. And then when you start getting into like really specific stories, like for example, anything going on in Russia, anything going on in Poland, European countries or whatever, and even when you're dealing with American stories that deal with people of color, a lot of Americans just don't pay attention because they don't have empathy for those characters. They don't have that experience, and so they can't have empathy. And I think the more you venture out of your shell, venture out of your echo chamber, you're going to find yourself having a more enriched life, understanding why people do what they do.
Well, and it's been said that travel is it's a way to advance your knowledge of the world. I mean, in general, and we've traveled all over Europe, and I go to England every year, so because I love it and love the people and the culture.
Because I find that when I go on my when I do investigations or when I get out of town, or especially when we're working on. I mean, you said you did for Leverage the D.B. Cooper story.
Yes.
And what's funny is when I go out in these areas where D.B. Cooper allegedly went down and whatever,
right?
You meet all of these salt of the earth people at the aerial store. You meet all these salt of the earth people that serve you coffee and waffles at a cafe. Those are the people I love to talk to.
It's really a rich experience. 'Cause
Yeah.
when I did Mania, I think I interviewed over 50 people. And so you get to really talk to people. And then when you're editing, you get to hear them over and over again. I got to know Harry Glickman very well. And by listening to him, I got to know him even better, so.
Did you get that experience with House by the Side of the Road when you're dealing with, generational type of?
It was definitely a different, they were farmers, so it was a very different kind of subject, but just as interesting as any of those other people.
Well, see, and that's the thing is that when I watch a variety of movies, I have a variety of tastes. But for me, what was funny is my wife turned me on to Parasite. And I had no desire to see a Korean film. Why would I want to see a Korean film? Like, once again, the empathy gap. I don't care about, Korean whatever because it's Korea. I watched it and I was like, this is amazing. You know, I watched the film and I'm going, I can see why this got the Academy Award. And you know, once again, it gets you out of that shell. You'd say, well, why would I want to see a movie about Korea or a Korean family? That doesn't, you know, but it taught me something. I learned from it.
Yeah.
So if you can get yourself to the point where you're watching these movies that are salt of the earth type of films, you're going to find yourself learning more about people. That's why I want to see that Nomad, that new Nomad. Is that what it's called? Nomadland or whatever? Can't remember. I think it's called Nomad.
Right.
And it's about, you know, just someone who is going from town to town meeting people.
Right.
Well, that sounds like a boring premise from a film, but no, if the people are quality people or they're interesting.
Every person is interesting to talk to, especially if you're interviewing them, you know, for a film, because you know, you're getting to ask them questions that are interesting.
Right.
You're picking the questions. So, I mean, that's always, I mean, that's my favorite part of it.
I don't want to, you know, I guess I've been watching the John Wayne Gacy interview that they just released, and it's funny because I actually have, once again, a connection to John Wayne Gacy because I talked to the lawyers, and they sent me his suits that he wore when he was in court, and we used them because we thought they were haunted, you know, kind of a scary thing, but we had his suits, and I had never seen John Wayne Gacy before speaking, and as I was watching him speak, I learned I had a whole new view of him.
Yeah, well, because you're getting to personally sort of like see them and hear them.
Right.
You know, and that's different than reading.
But I never had the desire before because he's a killer, you know, already. I don't want anything. But then the minute you're exposed to him and you see how he would operate and how his mind would think, it changes the perspective. And I think, you know, someone like you who captures that, who, you know, going to Poland and doing those things, you know, you're actually ensconced in the culture. You're moving into different areas that, you know, you never thought you had in you.
Right. Well, I think, you know, I grew up with watching a lot of foreign films. And so I was watching all the Japanese films. I was watching, you know, and it got started for me watching British shows, and then that kind of went out into all the other, you know, it's sort of when you're studying film, you're watching everything too, you know. And there's a lot of great films everywhere, you know. So
I think that what we need, I think that what would save, I mean, there are a lot of people that are saying that Hollywood is dead, that COVID killed it.
Well,
what would you say to that?
I'd say there's ebbs and flows and valleys and, you know, so on with the creative process, and we're kind of like maybe we're in a valley somewhere,
right?
But like the beginning of the 70s was a boom for film because they were allowing new directors to have their voice, and it was more like Scorsese and De Palma and all those people, Lucas, doing their thing. And I think that's important, is to have that voice. And again, it starts with a script. So you're having the writer tell their story. And I think the less you mess with that, the better. Because you want that. Like, you know, the writer of, I'm forgetting it. Anyway.
Okay.
I have,
forget it. Yeah.
I have that moment. But there's a writer I was thinking of who's he's written all the series of his show for 37 years.
Right.
So it has a voice that's constant all the way through.
Right.
It's called Last of the Summer Wine.
Okay.
Great show about old guys who act like kids. So, but you know, the one thing we get into the Highland Home.
Yeah, let's get into Highland Home because I've seen it everywhere. Let's talk about Highland Home.
Well, it's a music video I did in the end of 2019. Let's see, and it's been in like 146 festivals. It's won 32 awards. Yeah, it's done quite well.
I think where do we find Highland Home actually? Can we find it?
It's currently in festivals, but you can go to the highlandhomefilm.com to see the trailer.
Highlandhomefilm.com,
which was shot here in Oregon, and then we shot a little bit of it. The the DP's got material from Iceland
Oh,
incorporated.
that's amazing. Once again, going
Yes.
out of your show.
Right.
Dan, it was a pleasure talking to you. We're going to have you
Absolutely.
again for sure because
Great.
we
And
need
we'll
to
just talk about geek
just
stuff.
geek stuff. You had
Right.
but there's so much on your plate that we, it's like a big heaping helping of Dan Schaefer.
It is. There'll have to be a part 2.
Yes, there should
A
be.
sequel.
A sequel. We're going to do
Right.
that. Be
Right.
sure to storyboard it.
I will do
Just
that.
two guys sitting here talking. It'll be
Right.
easy.
Yes.
Easy stuff.
Yes.
Thank you guys for joining us for Channel Weird today, and we'll be back next week. And have yourself a fine Easter. See you soon.